Hi, my name is Kenei. Welcome to this video. I'm starting a series. This is actually the first of a series, the first video in a series where I'll be discussing some of my ideas. And these ideas, actually the name of the series is called Let's Talk. So the ideas I'm going to be talking about are not specific to any topic, but they have value that they can be helpful to somebody who listens to them. And that's why I felt like I need to make this videos because I felt I have something valuable that I can share that might be of use to somebody who pays attention to them. Because say you are paying attention watching this, so that's the price you have to pay to have to understand what I have to say. And so yeah, I think that's a good introduction. So it's going to be a casual conversation. Think of this as a podcast. And if you like to follow up like on the things I'm talking about, if I mention about something, just go to my Twitter page called Kenei Kennedy at Kenei Kennedy. I'll be retweeting some of the things I'm talking about because I've also been looking at some of the things that are happening today in the news. Think of this like a summary of things that are happening in the news. Actually, currently in the news, you don't have to go even further. You don't have to go even to Netflix to get some entertainment. All you have to do is switch on the news and just do some bit of digging for some stories that are happening. And that's enough entertainment. You can guarantee you that. So think of this as a little bit of civic education because I'm also enlightening some perspectives through this discussion. So in a way, it's a civic education video. Actually, the first video that I made is the one that the education problem, the university funding problem. And I'm still on that problem actually. This is a big, big problem. Let me discuss it from the beginning so that some people who are joining this conversation at this point, we're on the same page. So imagine this. Kibaki had a model where government pays 80% and the student, the family, pay 20%. And in that 20%, there's help and then there's some bursaries and the rest is now family pays. And in most cases, it's manageable. So now Ruto comes in and says that's a bad model. It's unsustainable. The best model is we classify students based on their several factors, the family, amount of people, income, all that. And then depending on the income of the family, that's the most they call classifying fact, the core factor that is making the classification. Uh, the classification groups, that is band 1, band 2, band 3, band 4, and band 5. The biggest factor that is defining the classification is income. So, basing on the income of the family, we determine where to put it. Now, we don't have going to discuss even about the band of which it's illegal because that's discrimination based on income. And it's even vague. Let's just not discuss about that. Let's discuss about the bare minimum. The one in band one. The person in band one is the neediest. And now let's use that as the basis of this comparison between the Kibaki model and the Ruto model. In the Kibaki model, government paid 80%, and then there's help. The 20% is help, there's bursaries, family contribution, and all that. In this new model, the neediest band one, the government pays 70%. Now, from 80% to 70%, what has happened? Has the government increased spending or has the government reduced spending? Think about it. The way I see is the government has reduced spending, and that means the household has increased spending. But now the argument that the president brings in marketing this model is helping the neediest get more funding from the government. And now think about it. How? I mean, it's a contradicting statement. The statement says this, but the reality is that. And even this is education we're talking about. This is university education. This is the place where most students decide or discover who they are or what they want to do, what they want to, how they want to orient themselves. This is the place. If this place is not accessible, then that means the society is going to be affected the most. But then what will happen to the society? In theory, people will be more ignorant because they'll not have that opportunity to have their ignorance uh, challenged in a sense. Because usually when you're ignorant to something, it's not because uh, it, it, it might most the popular scenario is it's not your fault. You have not been challenged with a new perspective. So that's what university does. It just challenge you with new perspectives that make you think in different ways, that create a different persona, an engineer, a doctor, and all that. But see, the ripple effects of education being expensive is that the society becomes more ignorant. But then, how does that affect the politician? In my opinion, it doesn't. Why? Because the politicians in Kenya have have basis. The basis of their conversation is is based. As in the platform of their conversation is based on the idea that Kenyans are ignorant. Like for example, when somebody puts you in an analogy of as in when let's say let me use this practical example to best explain my point. The current government sees the housing housing is the best way to cure unemployment, and in that they mean the works around housing. And I'm not undermining that work; it's very important. But that's how they view that's how they view us. Like we are supposed to be aspiring to work in those places, that kind of an environment, all of us as youth. And that kind of environment requires more physical work rather than mental work. This is a mental work, but the mental work is done before the work is begun. It is the planning, the architectural design, the site licensing, and all that. Before even the contractor conceptualize the foundation of that. All that heavy lifting of the say the blue collar work is done before the construction, and that is done usually. The number of people that do that is very few. in the sense that the company sizes cannot absorb a lot of people in that space of planning and all that. But then that means when they say these jobs of affordable housing, they're referring to the manual labor. So now, when somebody puts you in a position where they look at you like you are worth nothing more than manual labor, they are convinced you're ignorant because they're convinced you're not enlightened to do any other option. You have nothing better to do other than you have no skill other than the skill of manual labor. And so to them, the more ignorant you are, then it satisfies their assumption because it makes them look right. They were right to classify you as Njengo people. And that's not the only class that's not the flag that represents that characterizes that personification from the politicians. Another flag is the that nini kazi mtaani, manual labor. So they look at you in the sense that you have no skill, you know nothing more than how to use your muscles. And in the sense that they they say they take that assumption because they know they have already fucked up the education system. And that guarantees them not being wrong when they take that assumption. So they are reducing the population into manual labor, depriving the most valuable asset that the population has, which is the intellectual power. They're like telling you, we are the ones who are going to think, we are the ones who are going to take the actions of our thoughts. You represent actions matter. So like disregarding any opinion, disregarding any input, disregarding anything, because to them you are a subject to be talked to, not to be talked with. You're not an equal. I mean, look at you. You have a zero net worth. I have a billion net worth. I have 100 million net worth. What can we talk? You see, that's the kind of personification that they have for the youth, in the sense that that is how that's how they perceive you. Because look at the other examples is boga analogy, boda analogy. I'm not these professions are not professionals or they are not valuable careers. I'm saying there is more to there are more skills out there that if you were to classify people like say these engineers, even if not everyone is an engineer, but now everyone aspires to be an engineer because now you are elevating the status of who the people you're talking to. You're not looking down on them. You're like making them feel you're on the same plane. And that in a sense is empowerment. But that's not the case. The case is they're being talked down to because they don't see you as an equal. And that's part of the problem when you see all these conversations. That's why when the youth revolted on June 25th, the first action they did was to consolidate their political ideologies. Because now they know all of them have the same assumption. So it was very easy to do the consolidation, to just a phone call away and say, you know, I have an assumption these guys are ignorant. But today they have shown us that they are no longer ignorant and we have to like consolidate our assumptions and consolidate our view and all our previous analysis and create a new one that makes it seem like we have now understood them. But in reality, it's just a way of changing the conversation, but really the actions are the same. That's just public relations. But I'm not saying that in a sense of lamenting, or I'm describing the problem and the depth to which it is embodied in the society. But now, when uh, when faced with the question, what's the solution? The solution is just civic education, because now if I tell you you have been presumed to be ignorant in these analogies that we are putting you in the conversation of affordable housing, kuna kazi ya mjengo, and then when they tell you that, they're telling you that all those degrees you have are worthless. There's a, put them aside and kuja mjengo. That's what they're telling you. So when you cheer them when they're telling you affordable housing, you have to really like, it's like a negotiation table. When somebody comes to a negotiating table with the assumption that you are a weak, ignorant piece of shit that doesn't deserve this deal at this value, you have to represent yourself and say, no, that's not who I am. This is who I am. Because now, when you take that assumption that they have projected on you, then that means you become that, like you have accepted that, and now you have to act like that. But that's not what it means to be a Kenyan, because we have a constitution, we have we have rights, we have so many things that deny that kind of an assumption to take root. But that's the case, and that's the reality of to first accept is the case before we start thinking of how do you like maneuver it or solve it or even contribute. Think about the future of what it's supposed to be. It's a really big idea when you think of it like that. Because now you realize that the problem is not the people, or rather, let me put it this way: the problem are not just the people; it's the people plus the ideology. Because now you might change the person, but if you replace that person with another person with the same ideology, you still have the same problem. But if you don't change the person and change the ideology, then the problem goes away, regardless of who goes there. Because now there's there's a certain things that person can't do, because there are certain assumptions that he can't hold, because there are certain ways that they have been restricted from taking roots. See, it's like anticipating that in the future there might be leaders who are this clueless, and they might be this rudderless and formless, and decide to be so ignorant to assume that the population are nothing more than manual laborers, and disregard the fact that we were educated to use our skill, not to educated just for show, they say, yeah, you got certificates, and now you come and think I'm Jacob. You see, because now that devalues the value of education. And then look at the value of education now. The value of education is being overpraised. At the same time, the value of those being educated is being underpraised. Those who have already been educated. Look at the praise teachers are being paid for the value they are putting as teachers in the classroom. Like, how can you pay somebody 17,000 for value of educating a child through a whole a whole month to understand a certain concept, the same mathematics and science and all that, and you pay them 17,000? Is that really the value they're adding? If you like just compare it, the price you're paying them and the value they give, is this really equivalent? Because that's undervalue, that's value of education. And then you come to education, you overpraise the value of education, And then you come out CDA undervalued certificates and make those people look like, you know what, you might have 100 degrees, but we're into Buddha Buddha. Might have 20 degrees, but we're in Mamboga. See, in a way, it's it's like colonization, for the lack of a better, it's just colonization. Because in a colonization setup, this is what you'd expect. The population need to be undereducated so that the colonizer has the superior authority in the sense of even being the superior power. The most intelligent are the only people in parliament. The rest of you are idiots. The most intelligent are the ones in state, and the rest of you idiots. You are there to be talked down to, not to talk with them. That's why when you try to bring petitions, they shoot you. You know, this is the kind of realities that we have to swallow. It's really difficult to swallow because when you look at these realities, like look at the June 25th, that was a petition against the finance bill where people were saying we are no longer doing this finance bill is not representing our interests. And they've been telling you through public participation, but it's like you're not listening. So we have come to petition this finance bill and tell you in person, like this finance bill is not it's not in our interest. And when we are coming to tell you, instead of listening, you shoot the message and change the message. These people are anarchists. These people I don't know what is spelling out. And now when you realize the message is not going anywhere, you go to default. You know, this reality, the reality, the honest truth, the message is the same. The taxes. Let me just take this out. Let me just stop the taxes in Kenya, so that we can get a picture of the reality. Currently, being employed in Kenya is not a glamour. It's not a show. Can't brag like I'm employed. Like why? Even though unemployment is a problem, being employment is also a problem because now for those who are employed, just ask for the payslip. Just ask somebody, how does payslip look like in terms of taxes? Just look at that. Look, first of all, start with the value for money. Like, what's the value for? Let's say somebody is working for government. There's a certain value for their job. Let's just use the 70,000 case studies. Just says they pay 19,000 for the value of their work. Well, if it's 25,000, let's say 25,000, 12,000 for per month for the value of their work. And then you look at the pay, look at the deductions, look at the tax, and then after that, the net is subjected to VAT during shopping, subjected to VAT, and then what is left is now subjected to rent. In some cases, there's this rental income tax that is looming, that is subjected to another renting tax. You know, this rent income tax, is not paid by the person who owns or is renting the apartment. It's paid by the tenant. Because the person will just push it to the tenant and add it to the rent. So this is a bill on the tenant, not a bill on the landlord. So you combine all these taxes and you look at now what you're left with, and you look at now the work you do, and if you were to do something like say invest or do business, how long you have to do that work to save enough to have capital, and you look at that and you're like, that part of the game is also rigged. If you might think like, okay, the unemployed are the one who are facing the worst. They are unemployed and they have been ignorantly placed into manual labor jobs like affordable housing and the rest, and Kazimtani and the rest. So those are the people who are facing the worst. You may think that, and it's true, but don't forget, even the employed are also facing the worst in the sense of the taxes, the VAT, and then you come back to their loans, and then you kuja to the interest payments. Because now, when you go to the loans, see, when you take a loan against your paycheck, there's a, the interest rate on that loan, in most cases, is not fixed. It's varying depending on the CPK rates. In most cases, a loan against paycheck, the interest rate is dependent on the CPK. And I'd like to invite accountants and professionals in the industry to either contradict or validate this argument. But that is on that. My point is this: that these loans, due to inflation, are becoming expensive. And as they become expensive, the paycheck that it is being anchored on is the same. That paycheck that is being anchored on, it's now depreciating in value because the taxes are increasing. And the taxes are increasing not just on the income tax, but also on the VAT. So that means the purchasing power of this paycheck is reducing. So that employed person that you might think is having, the best time, it's not actually the reality. You can ask a few. And if you can confirm this, come to the comment section and tell us your story. But you see, that's the reality in that sector. There's this other sector of business. Now there's corporate tax in business, there's income tax, there's VAT, there's excise duty, all these licenses, all these permits, and then there's that what is this mm, other bills like garbage and all that. If you combine all those expenses and the operation expenses, and then you weigh it on this income that is from the products you're selling or the service you're offering. And remember, the income is coming from the people who are employed in most cases. So you compare to this depreciating income and appreciating expenses, and you see why businesses are like, and it's not all businesses, there are some businesses that are doing well, like the businesses that are in the finance sector, the ones with the loans, because now the interest rates are going up, they're collecting more. And they're collecting more to their not to their and the interest rate going up was just intentioned for them to make a profit. It was intentioned for it to reduce inflation in the market. But the resulting effect is the collector makes a profit, an increased profit. So now that dynamics playing out when this protest of reducing interest rates, that is to the benefit of the consumer, but it's not to the benefit of the credits. But when the interest rate goes up, the argument might be to the benefit of the consumer in the sense of inflation because prices of goods are going to go down when the interest goes, but at the same time, interest payment goes up, so the purchasing power goes down. So it's like a balancing situation that is painful either way. And these are some of the realities that are present, all happening at the same time again. And I think understanding them kind of gives it chills because now you get to see a reality that is so deep and also so They just they miss the point so many times. You wonder where to begin when you're trying to solve it because problems are riddled everywhere. I think we need to stop that. Let you digest it. Think about it. Tell me what you think. Share the comment section below. And if you feel like some of my statements are not true, point out the minutes. Like in this particular minute, you said this particular statement. And I don't think it's true because this source is contradicted or that source contradicted. Share it in the comments. I'd like to look at it. If it's true, I'll agree. If it's not true, I'll tell you to check your facts. And that's just part of the conversation. Let's talk. See you next time. It's me, Kenei. Let's talk.